What is up, everybody? We're live, but you know this because you're watching this. And guys, I am so pumped. I love interviewing anybody. I am just fascinated by people and what makes us tick, what makes us different, how we're similar, anything really around that. And this man that you are seeing beside me, Coach Steve Pfrenzinger, he has very quickly become a new mentor in my life. He is a client of mine through content compounding, but that is not why he's here, because he's unbelievable. And so I just want to read you guys very quickly before he just takes the stage. This probably won't even be an interview. I'll probably ask him one question and just let him preach for like 30 minutes because of all the wisdom that he has inside of that brain. But guys, let me just read you a few of the things about Coach Steve. He's an entrepreneur that built and sold 2 8-figure revenue businesses. He's coached hundreds of innovators and change agents at Sony, Disney, Broadcom, Tesla, PwC, SpaceX, Oracle, and so many more. All right, he is a Forbes author, speaker, and researcher. He's in the Hall of Fame for angel investing. Right? Am I getting this right, Coach Steve?
Yep.
He's a frequent podcast guest. You were just on a podcast 2 days ago? Actually, with a gentleman yesterday.
Yeah.
With a gentleman out of the UK, and then you're also you're writing a book that is based around the 5 barriers to success that you have created over your time of growing your own businesses, coaching individuals. And you are also, maybe the biggest accolade is you're a cancer survivor.
Damn right.
And so you have looked death in the face where you were not promised anything, and the Lord has brought you through that and given you just an unbelievable mission in life at the ripe young age of 70 years old.
Don't make me cry.
And so, Coach Steve, it is such an honor to have you here as I guess a young whippersnapper, like I would still be considered. So I am so excited to learn from your wisdom. Guys, if y'all have questions, please put them in the comments, because this is going to be a 30, 45 minute. I don't know how long it's going to go, but it's going to be an unbelievable time where I believe you are going to be imparted with wisdom and opportunity that is going to change the way 2021 could potentially look for you. So, Coach Steve, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, listen, I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. I mean, especially because 2 years ago, I was dying of cancer and begging for miracles.
Wow.
Just a second. So, what happens when you're looking for these miracles, you make promises. And one of the promises is I came out of retirement. I was a retired guy with a lot of money in the bank, traveling the world in private jets, playing golf in St. Andrews, walking around in the Taj Mahal, going out on the Serengeti Desert. I went to Easter Island. I've been to Tibet.
Wow.
I've been to the Panda Center in Chengdu, China, and my wife had a panda baby sitting on her lap, if you can even ponder that. So,
oh my gosh.
So again, I'm just so damn happy to be here. And when I got the good news through the grace of God and some radical robotic surgery, I immediately said to myself, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I went from literally listing people I was going to invite to my funeral and where I was going to be buried to what am I going to do with this new swing at the ball that I'm getting. So I look back and I've built businesses and I've done all this high-end one-on-one coaching, and I've been an incredible investor. My gift is matching talent to task. I understand personalities, and so I just out of 400 people, I'm number one in returns because I know how to pick. The secret is the jockey. It's the jockey. It's the, it's got to be a reasonable deal, but I'm telling you, so that'll be a whole nother subject that we can talk about. But when I said to myself, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I said, I've got to figure out a way. I mean, I've mastered one-on-one high dollar coaching. Execs were paying me 30 to 50,000 a year just to have access. So I said, I'm going to find a way to impact millions of people. So I have some great ideas. I'm writing a book. I'm preparing a digital course that's going to be supplemented with periodic group Q&A, Zoom calls where people can come into this environment and say, Steve, I saw your video on managing the mind, and I really have a question. I'm dealing with a problem. And I just so look forward to that. I mean, the whole concept of impacting potentially millions of people, I'm telling you, I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Well, and so with that in mind, it's been fascinating just because you actually, we were introduced to each other while I had coronavirus. And and so I had all this downtime just laying around. And so you and I began to text back and forth and learning about each other. And you began to share with me the 5 barriers that you've created. And so I want to go ahead and share this graphic because I want us to talk through, how you came to these 5 different barriers.
Yeah.
And I know you've talked to me in the past about how when you've coached, really high level people, all of them fall into one of these or multiple of these as their overarching struggle.
Yeah.
And so how did you ultimately come to the conclusion that these are the 5 ones that ultimately make the biggest impact for people?
Well, it's a great question. I can't say I'm not sure the right word is I created them. I discovered them. I was dealing with some pretty amazing people, but they wanted a coach, even excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Got a little frog going there.
Yeah, that's all right.
So, when I'm coaching somebody that is doing pretty well already, they know their subject area well. They're experts in something. But these are the things that I noticed that weren't related to their area of expertise, but this was just like baggage. This was like blind spots, just things that were kind of hanging on them. And I discovered that they all fit into about 5 different categories. Because when I would coach somebody, especially somebody that was either doing well and maybe it hit a bit of a roadblock and wasn't advancing as quickly, I found that there was always something in one of these 5 categories. First, it was either personality, which is sort of understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and God's given all of us a special giftedness. And honestly, it's possible you don't know what it is, it's just because today you only know what you've experienced, but there's probably something you don't know, and there's ways to find that out. And it's kind of part of self-awareness, I guess you might think of it. Then there's your brand, and that's your reputation. And this is the most interesting part, is that let's say you understand who you are, but what if other people don't see you that way? Oh my God, I used to run these elaborate 360 feedback surveys for these really powerful people. And it was kind of mind-boggling.
Wow.
what would come back. So brand and reputation is a key issue, and you have to understand it. And then there's mindset, or the mind itself. We all have this voice in our head, and it can be kind of troublesome sometimes. And there's a really interesting set of approaches to manage that. Matter of fact, I'm just about to submit an article to Forbes called The Mind, Friend or Foe, where I summarize the common techniques to either stay in the moment, which is when the mind will be quiet, or how to deal with a voice when you can't stop it. So I'm really excited about that. I've written a major paper on that will be part of my training course. Then there's visibility. I find there were people who were doing really, really well, but nobody knew of them except in their company or in their prior company. And there's a tremendous opportunity today through blogging and podcasting and social media to get visibility. And there's some really, really interesting techniques to do it in a very powerful way. and I have a way of rating, helping you understand where you are in the world of visibility. Are you professionally invisible, which I say is what I call below the line?
Okay.
Or are you above the line where you are professionally visible, which means there are different ratings. So I give you a chance to sort of rate yourself. And the last one is kind of an interesting catch-all. It's the journey and being accountable. There's bumps and there's barriers when you're on a journey, and we all seem to deal with barriers. But when things get bumpy, it's kind of amazing how that can impact you psychologically. And then I find, so I've come up with techniques that allow you to be accountable either to yourself or for you to quickly find an accountability partner who can meet with you periodically and review your progress, and not only your progress, but your state of mind, because there's so many things that contribute to a successful journey that include having balance in your life, eating properly, socializing, good health. I can't tell you how many successful people I've met who are in horrible health. They're divorced.
Yeah.
Their kids hate them.
Yeah.
And I say, and I almost, I as politely as I can say, was it worth it?
Yeah. Wow.
Was it worth it to arrive at the final destination and be all by yourself? And the bottom line is no. So, I teach a very balanced journey that will allow you to be happy. And I even help people define happiness so that it's more achievable. So these 5: personality, brand, mindset, visibility, and journey have become, absolutely the centers or the pillars in my program. And they are. And I have what I call the secrets to success for the ambitious professional. Actually, that should say ambitious professional. That's a temporary name for the book, but you're all, if you're listening, you're probably ambitious. You know your stuff. You're willing to work hard, take chances, take risks, put yourself out there, make mistakes. That's what successful people have to do. Well, but you don't want to be dragging along any of this baggage, well, and I have a way of helping you figure that out.
Yeah. What I love most about what you're doing, Coach Steve, is, ambition's great. And obviously anyone who's successful has to have it, but that doesn't make you, immune to your blind spots.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me how, I can be talking to people and people will say like, yeah, I know what my blind spots are. But that's impossible. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called a blind spot if we were aware of what they were.
Well, that's the difference. A blind spot is something you don't know. Baggage is something you know, but you haven't fixed it.
Yes, there you go. That's a great definition. And Steve, we've got somebody asking on Facebook, do you have a book that introduces these principles in more detail? And that is coming.
Yes, that is underway. I've got about 30,000 words written already.
Woo!
And so I'm cranking. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the words to this book are in the articles that I've written and in some of the training material that I have. So if you're curious, if you want to peek into my philosophy, go out to Forbes.com and search on Pfrenzinger. Pfrenzinger, Forbes.com, search on Pfrenzinger, and you'll see all of my articles, which are essentially a walk through my philosophy on what I call the secrets to success and dealing with the 5 barriers. So thanks for asking. That's how I would get this information, at least temporarily.
So Steve, what I want to walk through with you is I want to ask you a question inside of each of these barriers. So we can kind of, I know we're very limited on time today, but we can kind of begin to unpack a little bit of this. Okay. And so I want to start with personality, and because I've heard you say before that you are not your mind. So when you say that, like, what does that mean to tell someone you are not your mind? Because it makes sense for me to think, how am I not my mind? My mind is mine.
Yeah.
But you're saying I'm not my mind. So can you unpack like what that means?
Yeah, I think Actually, the article I'm writing now I think is going to address this, and so it's sort of fresh on my mind that the mind is an amazing tool. It's an incredible asset to us. It's very integrated, and it keeps us alive. It keeps our heart beating. But there are times that it can be troublesome. It's a question answering machine, and it just does. It's great for that. You can ask it questions, you'll get answers, and sometimes you don't even have to ask it questions. It just gets the message. Like, look at what you're wearing today. That's a question you asked yourself this morning. You may not have said the words, "What should I wear?" but the mind got the message and gave you that answer. So it's a cool tool to explore the past and ponder the future. But in the moment, the mind has a pesky little problem where it likes to say things to you. Now, if it's warning you, hey, there's danger, or it's, hey, I got this great idea, that's fantastic. But too often it sort of reminds you of dumb things you've done in the past, because the mind the mind has a database, and it's full of our history, and both good and bad things we've said to ourselves, bad things that other people have said to us. So the idea that you are not your mind, I sort of bring up this model. I keep a model on my desk just to sort of show that there's sort of potentially a physical separation between what's in my head and this, because as Eckhart Tolle says, you're not your mind, and you have to disidentify with its contents, because in there is a bunch of crap. Mm-hmm. And I don't need to be reminded of that constantly. Yeah. So I've written a number of summaries on different ways to quiet the mind. And I won't go through all of them right now, but I'll tell you, like, today will be a great day for me to give you sort of the number one issue in each of the 5. The number one way to quiet your mind is to listen. Yeah, listen, listen. When you listen, you force your mind from, this conversation with you to engaging with what's going on. The mind becomes an observer in the moment, almost like a camera person at a film shoot. Camera people don't talk. The beauty is when you're in the moment, the mind loses its voice. The cameraman, when he's shooting, he doesn't talk. He's just sitting there. Sure. He's taking pictures, right? I guess that's an old time version of it. So this idea that, you are not your mind, and sometimes you can sort of visualize it. I keep this on my desk, so when I do get some bad thoughts, I look at it and say, shut up. That's another way to control it. But I think listening is, to keep the ball rolling here, and I'll summarize this in my next article, but certainly listening, whether you pay attention to what somebody's saying, which, by the way, is one of the biggest compliments you can give to somebody, or whether you listen to the sound of nature, winds blowing through the trees or birds chirping, or whether you listen to yourself breathing. Actually, currently, my number one way to stay in the moment and quiet my voice is just to do deep breathing, 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. You do that 3 or 4 times, and I'm telling you, your mind will just clean out. I mean, the mind just can't deal with it. Just listen, literally listen to that deep breath filling your lungs and then leaving your lungs. And it's a marvel. Matter of fact, it's better than counting sheep when you want to go to sleep at night.
So, Steve, how do you, because obviously, you said earlier, you are out of 400 angel investors, you're number one for pairing people up the right way and seeing positive revenue generated.
Right.
So you've obviously gotten very good at deciphering what thoughts come into your mind that speak truth and what thoughts come into your mind that speak lies. How do you decipher between knowing like what is truthful and what is not?
Well, it's a great point. I think anytime your mind speaks to you, you have to at least give it some consideration, because the mind really wasn't designed to make us happy. It was designed to keep us alive, to keep us from being eaten by that saber-toothed tiger. So the mind's used to saying, "Ooh, be careful. Look around the corner. Oh, don't go out there. You'll get eaten and stuff." So the mind's used to protecting us in a lot of ways. But today, in today's world, we're not, survival is not a day-to-day issue,
Right.
So the mind is kind of running out of things to say to us because like there aren't any saber-toothed tigers out there. So the challenge is the mind when it's in there, it's sort of in there with the past and the future, and there's not, so it wants to get your attention, and it will say increasingly crazy things to get your attention. And I've had to, over time, just begin to ignore much of what it says. It's called me dumb. It's called me a number of things, But there's great comfort in me knowing that when my mind speaks to me and says something dark or ridiculous, that it's not really me. It's just it's, as Tolle says, the mind is needy. It's lonely in there, and it wants to engage. It's like being stuck at your computer. It's in there with your computer. It says, let me talk to somebody. So again, just an analogy to have you know that your mind will say bizarre things to you, and you're going to have to let them go and just, not take it personally, be comforted that it's not you. Matter of fact, one of the techniques is that part of the concept of being mindful is being present and in the moment and not judging what happens. So if you do get a bad thought, just think of it sort of passing through. Don't judge it. Almost think of it as like clouds passing by on a gently breezy day. And
That's
just
good.
again, if it says, hey, be careful, you have to consider that. But if it says you're an idiot, you're a fool, or you're going to screw this up again, or, then you're going to have to look at it and say, shut up.
Yeah.
You 3-pound pile of mushy flesh.
Yeah.
That's another thing. My son-in-law turned me onto this. I would kind of say abrupt things to quiet it, but my son-in-law didn't want to do that. He makes fun of it. It's like it says something stupid to you, and then you go, "Boy, you're funny."
Yeah.
It says something else, you go, "What are you, lonely?" So
that's great.
Again,
just
don't take it too seriously. Just don't take it. Don't take it too serious, because generally speaking, the darkest thing it's going to say to you, that's not you talking. That's your needy mind trying to engage you in a dialogue, trying to pull you into your head. That's when you're in your head, you're in there talking to yourself. So that's what you're trying to avoid.
So I jumped ahead. I asked the mindset question first, but I want to go back to personality, because you and I have talked about this on the phone over the last month or so. I as are you, am infatuated with personality tests and skill assessments and all of those things. So what would you say? My question is, like, what's your favorite assessment? What's your favorite test that helps people better understand who they are or how they're wired? Because I'm blown away, Coach Steve, at how many people I run into that have never taken any of these assessments.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I've taken them all. And certainly Myers-Briggs is the deepest dive you can take in the business world. There's a mental model called the Big Five, which is very popular within the sort of the world of psychologists.
Okay.
And you're probably only going to interact with it if you have a psychologist. But so I like them both, but I want to stick with probably Myers-Briggs because it's the most easily understood, and I've done a tremendous amount of research on it. Other tools like DISC and the Enneagram and others are interesting, but they sometimes confuse core traits, which sort of you carry with you your whole life, versus a learned skill. So a learned skill is like, I'm an accountant. I went to school to become an accountant, so I learned how to do that. But if I'm an introvert at heart and I have a reserved personality, and that causes me to have to manage my energy, and it causes me to be a little more responsive in conversations and stuff, that's something I carry with me my entire life, and I need to be aware of that. So again, I would probably say Myers-Briggs, but I'll be honest, today, if I were going to refer you to a site There's a site in England called 16 Personalities, www.16personalities.com, 16 personalities, that has blended those two together and come up with an incredible hybrid. They still use the Myers-Briggs notation, but they add a fifth character. So if you know the first four, it adds a fifth one called assertiveness, which I'll admit, Myers-Briggs has never been good at judging assertiveness. And some people say assertiveness and confidence and determination tend to be things you learn over time, like when you master a subject and stuff. So it's possible you could say that Myers-Briggs says, I don't deal with learned skills, but Big Five does manage. Matter of fact, there are 4 functions in Myers-Briggs, and there's 5. I got to get myself in the camera here. 5 in the Big Five, and 4 of them overlap. And so the fifth one that's different between the two is the concept of assertiveness. So I really do like that one. I think that, anything that can legitimately give you feedback and insights into your core strengths and weaknesses is hugely valuable, because, when I made my early discoveries, I went from thinking I was good at something to knowing I was good. And let me tell you something. When you know you're good at something, everything changes. Your body language, your voice, your eye contact, your handshake, everything just, when you say, ooh, that person has presence. You heard that. They walk in the room and all of a sudden everybody goes, whoa, who is that? What is presence? Let me tell you, presence is having true confidence and certainty about who you are. And it manifests itself in a sense of unstoppability. Wow. I made these incredible discoveries when I was young, and I became, even my friend said, Steve, you look unstoppable. And I said, well, I am.
Well, so I want to dig into that, because you said the key word, you used the word feedback about a minute ago. And I was fascinated as you and I started talking a month ago. You had said the greatest thing that's ever happened to you in your life was learning to desire feedback from people, when most people are scared to death of it.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me tell you, having given feedback to hundreds and hundreds of people, feedback is nothing to fear. 95% feedback, I can tell you with great confidence, is either good news or easily fixable. Okay.
That's good.
Now, there's 5% that isn't, like, I need to be 7 feet tall. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a story about feedback, and the reason why my entire life I've been so open to feedback. I wasn't a very good kid in school. I had ADD, and I was staring out the window and tapping my foot and all of that. So when I graduated from high school at 18, I really didn't plan on going to college. I was just sort of hanging around. And one day, some friends came by and said, Steve, we're going down to the local junior college to take an intelligence test. And that they say it can help us pick our careers. And I go, oh boy, intelligence test. Nobody had ever told me I was smart. Somebody, some said I was a good athlete, but nobody ever said I was smart. So I reluctantly went. So I took the test. And when it was over, the lady that administered the test at the front of the class calls me up. She goes, Steve Pfrenzinger, please come forward. So I walked up and I go, hi, my name is Steve. She goes, Steve, you did incredibly well. Matter of fact, you aced the abstract comprehension portion of the test. And I've never seen anybody do that. She said, that's amazing. And I said, wow, what's abstract comprehension? I didn't even know what it was. And she says, well, it's one of our check marks, our filters for recommending careers in technology.
Wow.
Or engineering and stuff. So I said, what are my options? She said, well, a 4-year degree, or, there are some new trade schools out there which you can take and become like a computer programmer. And I said, really? So I decided that I was first going to try the trade school. So I went to the trade school, took a test, did well, aced the course. My instructor was so happy with me. He referred me to a aerospace company that he used to work at. I went there, took another test and aced it, and got a job immediately because they were hiring for a new airplane they were building. And so within a period of a few months, I went from a dumb 18-year-old kid working at a car wash with no idea where I was going to a salaried employee at a major aerospace company making more money than my parents.
Oh my gosh.
All because some silly little test gave me some feedback about myself and told me something about myself that I didn't know. That day, from that day forward, I could never get enough feedback. I took more tests, good or bad feedback. It didn't matter. All feedback is good because if it helps you figure out what you're good and not so good at, it controlled my life. It got a job. I started a business. I built multi-million-dollar businesses. I made millions of dollars personally. I look back and I go, oh my God, it all goes back to that one epiphany.
Wow.
That epiphany moment when somebody told me something I didn't know, and I opened myself up to feedback. So the bottom line, never fear feedback. Matter of fact, I used to jokingly call myself the feedback hound because I love it, because again, 95% of it's good or fixable. It's good in that it either confirms a strength or it tells you about a new one, like I didn't even know I had, or it tells you something that's very easily fixable. You know, if you violate personal space or you're too aggressive or talk too loud, come on, stop doing that. That's not hard to do. So
what would you say?
Don't fear feedback.
What would you say to people that I think the reason they fear feedback is because of personal insecurity?
Yeah.
And so how do you coach that person that really just isn't secure enough in who they are, so they don't desire the feedback because they just see feedback as a negative as opposed to an opportunity to be better?
Yeah, I think you have to understand that, you know, the sooner you find out something, the better. And the fact that so much feedback is good. I mean, and again, or it's easily fixable. But, you know, I think just about anything you do, you know, one of the things I teach is getting people to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Almost everything you do in life that's new is going to make you a little uncomfortable, you know, and it's kind of the price of admission to advance in life. You've got to live through that early anxiety. And I almost didn't go to that intelligence test on that day for the very same reason. I was so insecure that they were going to tell me I wasn't smart, you know. But I went and I faced my fears, and I think you're going to have to just face it and just, you know, let people know. You know, there's lots of ways to get feedback, and one of them is simply to let people know that, you know, you want to get ahead in life, and you need constructive feedback. I mean, you know, when people aren't being friendly, you know, you want feedback. I mean, for feedback to be valuable, it has to be comprehensive, timely, and actionable. Comprehensive, you know, don't call me a jerk. Tell me why I'm a jerk. Okay. It has to be timely. Don't tell me that last month you said this. I go, last month? You know, couldn't you tell me sooner? Yeah. And tell me something that's actionable. You know, don't tell me that I'm not 7 feet tall, because I can't fix that. So comprehensive, timely, and actionable.
Man, that's good.
And here's the key. When you let people know you're interested in feedback, don't think that's an opportunity then to give them feedback. This is not in the moment of feedback, it's got to be one way. Don't turn around and say, yeah, and you wear crazy clothes, you know.
That's good.
So just remember, just be open to feedback. And the only thing you can say to somebody who gives you honest and constructive, the only thing you can say to them is thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Because if you don't know, I mean, it's crazy. I've seen careers stalled for years. I've seen careers sidetracked. I've seen opportunities disappear simply because, they weren't open to feedback issues that everybody saw except them. Because the reality is we don't observe ourselves very well.
Right.
And we don't ask others, and often people don't tell us. If you want to enter the feedback game is the fast track. You want the fast track to success, get on the feedback train, baby.
Well, and so that's what I wanted to move to next, because brand in your secrets to success, I wanted to ask a question like, how can I tell others that I'm open to their feedback and constructive criticism?
Well, just like that. I mean, if, for example, let's say if you're a manager and you have people, you have a meeting and you have people in there, just let everybody know that, let's say there was a recent announcement or something. You just get everybody to go around and say, look, I'm looking for both pluses and minuses here. So I'd like each of you to tell us why you think what we did today was good and where you think we can improve. Now, if all I'm asking you is where can we improve, and that's a pretty easy question. So I think you just have to make sure everybody understands that, and just ask for it. Now, on the brand side, which is a much broader set of issues, that's where you're interested in matching how you see you to how others see you. And the challenge is that the other category can include groups. In other words, your family might see you a certain way.
Okay.
Your coworkers might see you a certain way. Your peers in the industry outside of work may see you a certain way. So it gets a little dicey, and you need to be aware of these things and not be afraid to say, what do you think? It can start with asking somebody for an opinion of something you've done. You read my report this morning. Where do you think I could have improved it? And maybe you could have summarized it better, possibly.
Steve, for you, can you recall a time in your life where what you thought people thought of you and what people actually thought of you had the biggest gap? Like, what was that moment of?
Yeah, well, I've got
awareness.
I've got a kind of an embarrassing story. When I got into my career and was feeling pretty good and writing and getting a lot of visibility, which I became very very interested in. I got invited to speak on a panel discussion at a pretty large industry event. And I went up there, and there's a moderator, and they asked questions, and I just thought I did fantastic. When it was over, I walked off that stage going, man, I nailed it. I answered every question. I was feeling so good. I walked off stage. My wife was in the audience because we were going to have lunch afterwards. And I walked up very confidently and said, well, honey, what do you think? And she goes, that was awful.
Oh,
and I said, what? What do you mean awful? She said, Steve, you were chewing gum and smacking it. Everybody in the auditorium could hear you smacking your gum. And what were you doing? You were tapping your foot. What song was that? She says, all they could hear was smack tap, smack tap. And I go, and I knew instantly she was correct, because that's been a problem since I've been young. I'm a foot tapper and I'm a gum chewer. And I go, oh my God, who would have told me that? I would have walked away from there with a completely different impression of how it went. So here's a case where, thank heaven for my wife, who is not shy to share to share her information. But that's what you want. I mean, I can't think of any case where a delay in finding out something that's valid is good. I can't think of any situation. The sooner you know, the better. It can change everything. It changes everything. So those are my two stories.
And I bet you were way more aware every time you took a stage after that you didn't have any gum in your mouth.
Oh my God! The first thing is take the gum off and then wear soft-soled shoes. So if I did do a little tapping, because I like to sit on a bar stool. I'm on a bar stool here where I can stand up and sit sideways and stuff. For some reason, standing for an hour just never worked real well with me.
No, me either. So So you mentioned while you were kind of telling that story, you talked about how you were writing to create visibility for yourself, which visibility is one of your 5 barriers to success. So
Yeah.
my question is, in all of your experience and inside of all the companies that you've mentored and coached and overseen, like, what's the best and fastest way to get better known in 2020 moving into 2021?
Yeah. There's sort of 2 sides to this. One, I have a special place in my heart for introverts because I am an introvert. I'm a reserved person, but I do have some assertiveness around my area of expertise. But so I was always looking for ways to meet people that I didn't have to do cold calling, because I just hated that as an introvert. This idea that I can make every 10th call was going to go well. And I go, yeah, but what about the other 9?
I know.
So I said I had to find a way to do that. So one thing I knew I could do is I was developing a pretty good ability to write, and I submitted endless articles until finally a magazine, Computer World, published an article. And then from there, after your first one, it was easy.
Yeah.
So I got in the habit. Listen to this. So when I wouldn't call people up and say, hey, you want to buy some computer services? I called them up and asked them if I can interview them for my article. And guess what? After a while, I mean to tell you, 80, 90% of the people would say, sure. And I say, well, maybe I'll even include a quote. And you go, boy, offer them a quote, and you got them. So I started interviewing people as a way to meet people, and that certainly created visibility. But I'd say in general, the best way to create visibility is to not try to sell people. It's try to educate people. I learned that from a brilliant man named Chet Holmes, who wrote The Ultimate Sales Machine. And because we're all selling something, whether it's business or our religion or our philosophy or something, we're all selling. And he was a pretty reserved guy, and he would always say, just stop selling, start educating.
Yeah.
And he'd give us an example. He'd say, listen, you could fill a room with 100 people, and you're never going to have more than 2 or 3 people in there that are interested in what you're selling at that point in time. So you got 97 people in there who don't give a silliness about what you're offering.
Right. Yeah.
So what do you say to 100 people that could provide any value at all? And here was his example in the way of educating. He'd say, let's say you're selling carpet cleaning, and only 3 out of 100 are interested in what you're doing. But you discovered that there's this great report that says that if you don't clean your carpet at least once a year, you put your family at health risks. Okay. So that's called educating. So you can educate people, and they'll remember you. They'll see you differently as an educator than they will as a salesperson. And I use that concept through my writing and my speaking. I educate people. That elevates my brand. It makes me more approachable. It makes me, when I call people every once in a while, I say, hey, aren't you the guy that, it's your way of raising your visibility. So actually, chapter 4 in Chet's book is a killer. So The Ultimate Sales Machine, chapter 4, made me a ton of money. And he says he made billions for Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger with his concepts in chapter 4 of The Ultimate Sales Machine. So that's my fantastic tip for this section.
Wait, and we'll go check that out. Chapter 4. and so the last, I'll put the pillars back up. The final piece to this puzzle is journey, which I'm sure for different people it's easier and harder based on if you're an in the moment person or you're truly a visionary that can see down the road and want to be in a certain place at a certain time. How would you do? Because accountability to me is a very sexy word that we love to say, but I don't know how many of us actually want it in our lives, because it makes it a little bit harder. And so how do we know? How does somebody know if they need accountability? what type of person should they look like to pair themselves with? Do you want a peer? Do you need it to be more of a mentor relationship by somebody that's already been there? What would you say about all that?
Well, let me back up and give you a little insight that people go to a lot of effort to acquire knowledge, and then I find a lot of times they don't apply it. Mm-hmm. And my philosophy has always been knowledge unapplied is wasted. It's wasted.
It's good.
and it ties into, but I'm kind of going with some, every once in a while I get interviewed and they'll always say, what's the number one piece of advice that you give to those you coach? And I said, oh boy, that's a tough one, but it kind of goes like this. And that is, I share with somebody something like maybe they're not they're not working on the goal that's so critical in their path to success. And I'll tell them about something and they say, yeah, I already know that. And I said, yeah, you know that, but you don't do that. Okay. So knowing and doing are two completely different things. And the only thing accountability is, whether it's your accountability of yourself or having somebody else's, is just to make sure you're doing what you know. I mean, does it make any sense to go to all this effort to prepare for something and then not take action? But right. I'm telling you, there's whatever this little voice is that says, oh, don't put yourself out there. Don't take these chances. Don't do this or don't do that. Matter of fact, if you ever wanted to be happy in your life, there's a real simple happiness formula. It's called progress equals happiness. Just make some progress on your goals. Just make some progress on your goals every day, and you will be a happy person. And your goals, your journey is really your trip to your goal. It's the things you do to accomplish your goal. And if you can just make the tiniest progress every day, make that phone call, introduce yourself, send your resume, read the first chapter of that book that's just been sitting there. Just make practice. And I'm telling you, you'll sleep like a baby at night. And that's one of the ways. Because I was one of these people that was never happy with what I accomplished. I stayed up late. I wrote until the middle of the night, and I went to bed unsettled because I held this incredibly high bar that said I was never, not that I was never good enough. It's just I never was doing enough. Okay. Yeah. But finally I said, my God, I'm going to drive off the cliff here, So I finally said, and then I heard that the happiness formula, that progress equals happiness. And I said, well, I want happy. I don't want to wait to be happy. I don't want to wait for the destination to be achieved or the goal to be achieved. I just want to be happy on the journey. Don't we all want to enjoy life? And yeah, that's what I want. Awesome. I mean, isn't that what you want? Yeah.
Steve, we got a question from my buddy Jeremy. He says, would it be fair to say that they don't believe what they supposedly know and they're just reciting a tagline compared to living out a belief?
Well, listen, having a true belief in something certainly is a motivator. And, I think you could probably slice it up in different ways. I mean, just because you learn something doesn't mean you believe it. I guess that's a good way to look at it. So I think, if you've learned something valuable and it makes sense to you, then you have to take action. Actually, it's interesting because a lot of the teaching that I will do is I will give people alternatives to accomplishing something, because I know that everything I recommend may or may not resonate with someone. In other words, if you're an introvert and I tell you to make money in real estate, you got to go out and knock on 100 doors a day and introduce yourself. You might say, I don't know. Yeah. But if I tell you, if you put together a little newsletter and send it out, or you organize a community cleanup on Saturday morning at 9:00, everybody meet at the park, that there's all kinds of ways to accomplish what you want to accomplish. But so, Jeremy, that's a great question. And it sort of gets into the whole issue of just, did what you learned resonate in your core? And did you believe it? And did that belief drive you forward? That's a great question. Great question.
Jeremy's very smart. So he's always got great questions. Somebody else, I can't see who they are, but they said, this is really good stuff, being convicted of putting more things into practice. And so Coach Steve, what I want to kind of start to wrap up on is I want to ask you, and I know that these 5 barriers are your babies, right? Because this is what you've built your entire way of teaching people. Is there one of the 5 that is more dangerous to put off than one of the others?
Oh boy, I hate to say this, but it depends, because what I will say is some people are going to see all 5 of those as issues. Some may see as few as one. To be honest, I'm not sure I've met anybody at this point that doesn't need some work on at least one of them. I think I mentioned earlier that there was sort of a 2.3 average with the people I coach. So 2.3 of the 5, because there's sort of an issue that's worth knowing here. Actually, could you go full screen for a second? Kyle, I want to sort of make a point here with me.
Oh, with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just a second.
Watch this.
See,
I'm going to take myself out for a second. I'm going to just let you preach all by yourself.
Okay, sounds good. So listen, this is really, really important. So over here are the barriers, okay? And the beautiful thing about a barrier is once you address it, once you understand your strengths through your personality, once you understand your brand, once you have your mind under control, once you have your visibility issues addressed, once you're making progress on your journey, it goes from barrier to asset. So it's interesting. What is stopping you can actually propel you, okay? But there is something in the middle, and it's kind of like no man's land. Let's say you've got a barrier, but it's not a big one. I mean, you're running a successful company, and you don't have a lot of visibility, but it doesn't matter because the company's doing well. So it's really kind of in the middle. I mean, it's not a barrier and it's not an asset. In other words, it's sort of neutral. So this idea that barriers can become assets, but if you don't address all of them, some of them are going to end up in the middle, and they're not going to propel you. Success is a matter of odds. Nothing guarantees success in life. Nothing. The only thing that addressing these issues can do is to improve the odds. And isn't that what we want? We just want better odds. Understanding our strengths and weaknesses, understanding our brand, controlling that voice, all of these things add to the odds that we'll be successful, and they'll add to the odds that you'll be lucky. I have found that people who address all 5 of these are suspiciously lucky. Lucky is being in a position to take advantage of an opportunity, being in a position to take advantage of an opportunity. So address these barriers to success, and you will find yourself getting very lucky. Things will just happen.
I love it. Coach Steve, you're kind of like Preacher Steve too.
Hey, I'm here by the grace of God, and if
Amen.
I can do good stuff, I'm here to serve.
So Steve,
that's the other reason I worried about, hey, I'm an old guy and all this, and screw it. I don't care how I look. I care about you.
That's right. That's right. That's what it's about. That, and to take this back for a moment before we wrap up, I work with people on video, right? That's what I coach people to do, is be better on video. And I think the most unteachable thing that makes you better at video is genuinely caring about other people, right? Your message is so clear. You don't care that you're 70 years old. You don't care that your hair's gray, because you care about the profound impact you can make in somebody's life. It's not about you.
Yeah.
I don't care if I look fat on camera. I don't care if my kids run in half naked. The whole point is not for me to look good. It's for me to try to encourage or love on or motivate someone to take a step. And that is the greatest thing when doing more video is do you genuinely care about the people that you say that you do? And so that's the secret weapon, I think, for me. And it sounds like it would be the same for you. So Steve,
Absolutely.
you've given us
this has nothing to do with me right now. This is
nothing.
This is payback because somebody decided that I can hang around a little longer and enjoy my glorious little 7, 9, and 11-year-old grandkids who I'm going to watch.
I love it.
Thank God. Thank God.
So Coach Steve, you've given us so much knowledge in 55 minutes. How do people get connected to you if they want to follow more of your stuff? What's the best way for somebody to connect?
Well, first off, I decided I only write for Forbes. So again, if you go to Forbes.com and search on my name, you'll see almost all of my thinking. I'll announce when the book is ready. I'll announce when the digital courses are ready. I do have a website, CoachSteveP.com, www.CoachSteveP.com. And you can register, which simply gives me your email so I can sort of keep you up to date on what I'm doing. I am going to start a podcast. I've been doing a half a dozen or so of these interviews and realizing I absolutely love them. I love the Q&A form. And ask me anything. I mean, trust me. At this point, I think I've seen it all.
Yeah, you definitely have. Yeah, so I want to give you. It doesn't make sense when you and I are on here that I should have the final word in this conversation, because you have far more to offer people than I do. So, in closing, what would be your final 60 seconds to the men and women that are watching and will watch in the future?
Yeah. Well, if you remember the diagram that went up, the bottom line was all about feedback. So just be open to feedback, because everything you need to know is out there. Somebody is going to share it with you, some test, some personality test, some intelligence test. It's all out there. Just be open to feedback. The other thing is, when I talk about the mind being friend or foe, one of the things the mind is very friendly is it's very smart. It understands premise. So if you ask a better question, and the mind will give you a better answer. For example, if you say, why can't I do something? The mind understands that what you're really saying is you can't. And it's going to give you reasons you can't. You're not smart enough. You didn't do your homework. You're not prepared. But you ask the same little mushy flesh in your head there, the question, how can I do something? And the premise it understands is you can do this. Well, you could do this or you could do that. So you're going to get completely different answers if you simply position the question to be on a positive premise. Okay.
That's good.
Again, I think I've summarized much of my thinking in those articles, which I would suggest you do. And then I guess one thing, because every once in a while, your mind will say something dark and you'll say, oh gosh, I can't even believe I thought that. I mean, I can't tell you a couple of times, just dumb stuff, but I go, ooh, man, that's evil. Ooh. But just remember, that's not you. That's not you. That is your needy, lonely mind just trying to get your attention, engage you in an unconscious conversation. So just be comforted when it says something outrageous. Just say, "Oh, you're funny," or "Must be lonely in there," or "Shut up." Again, just be free of the harassment that you might be heaping on yourself. Good. Just be comforted. I mean, be comforted, man. It's not that's you. Good. It's your mind digging through the past, and that's why Eckhart Tolle said, disidentify with it. Don't be associated with all that negative crap in there. So
I love it.
So that would be my summary.
Well, Coach Steve, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with me, for imparting all this wisdom on us. I'm sure we're going to do this again in the future. If we don't talk to you guys that are watching, we're so appreciative that you gave us your time. We hope you have an unbelievable Thanksgiving with your families. Y'all be safe, and we will talk to y'all soon.
Can I ask just one more quick one? If you have a question, at info@stevefrenzinger.com, you can submit questions and they'll get answered. info@stevefrenzinger.com.
I'm gonna put it up here real quick, so y'all apologize. I apologize for my typing. Info. There you go. I think I got it. Was that it right there?
info@stevefrenzinger.com. Right. That's how you submit questions to me, either on live or, sometimes time permitting, I'll answer them directly.
You might hear your question answered on your podcast that's coming.
Absolutely. I when I do that, I answer all questions. I don't set any time limits. So,
all right, guys. Thank you for watching. We will see y'all soon.